Welcome to The Watcher. I'm your colleague Tom Pott, and I just watched episode 4 of Loki. And don't worry, I'm not going to rap this week. I did that last week, and that was mixed results at best. I should have written a rap if I was going to rap. I'm not, but we are going to rap about this episode of Loki, because I've been doing this every week with every episode, so please give this video a like and subscribe, because, of course, there's 2 episodes left, and I'm going to break down those 2 episodes too. And before we get into our recap, let me give some brief thoughts on this episode. Last week's episode, a lot of people kind of wrote off and were dismissive over it, and I was pretty much in the same camp. As much as I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, that episode definitely felt like a momentum staller. It felt like it didn't carry the wider plot anywhere. And with this episode, it feels like we got back on track, and it was a really good one. There's a lot of questions asked and answered, and, you know, a lot more questions to be answered after this episode, certainly. But I really enjoyed this episode, and I will say that this is the kind of episode and the point that we were all expecting to reach, where the TVA is called into question and the whole status quo changes. I know Tom Hiddleston, I think, said episode 4 and 5 were kind of the game changers and his favourite episodes. And you can certainly see why, because we were waiting for this to happen, and happen it did. So what did happen? Let's get into our recap then. And we start with a flashback, because we learn of how our Sylvie, our Lady Loki, basically came onto the TVA's radar. Well, not entirely though, because we start in Asgard and they just show up out of nowhere. It's just a kid playing with her toys, and they take her to the TVA. And I should explain Nexus event, because it's pivotal to this episode, pivotal to this series, and it's also the name of this episode, so now why not explain it now? The Nexus events, we talked about these before, but what it means is when someone deviates from what the timeline was supposed to be, and because of that, it creates a branch in the one timeline, the one true timeline. I can't remember what they call it, the fateful stream or something. I don't know. It sounds like someone taking a piss, and they're not taking the piss this though. Well, they are actually, because taking the piss is an Irish thing, by the way. That means you're messing around, you're joking, and certainly they are messing around and joking with this time stream. That was a weird diversion, and that's kind of what a Nexus event is. It's a diversion of our timeline. And when that happens, the TVA shows up, takes the variant, which is the person who caused this Nexus event, reset the timeline so it carries on as one true timeline. That is what our first episode started with. Loki basically deviated when he took the Cosmic Cube, the Tesseract, in New York. The TVA showed up, took that off him, reset the timeline so that it basically never happened. Okay? So the question we have is, what was the Nexus event that caused the TVA to show up in Asgard and take Sylvie? We don't get an answer to that. And it comes up again later, and that big question then is, was there a Nexus event at all? And if not, why did they target Sylvie? And what is the point of this? And it's, again, one of those larger questions, and I'm hoping we get an answer to, certainly hopefully get a satisfying answer to. But I don't know if they're expecting people to look into it that much. So hopefully I'll get an answer, at the very least. From there, we see that the person taking her into the TVA is actually Ravonna Renslayer, who, of course, has risen through the ranks of the TVA and is now a judge. We saw her judging Loki in the first episode, and she's basically the right-hand woman, I guess, of the Timekeepers. And as she is taking Sylvie to be sentenced, Sylvie grabs her tempad and disappears into a portal. And she's been on the run ever since, as she talks about when we catch up with Sylvie and Loki on Lamentus 1. Of course, last week they had a tempad that was broken, and they failed at recharging it, and now they're basically at the end of the world. They're listening to REM, it's the end of the world as we know it, and that's where they seemingly have accepted their fate, that they're going to die. Now, I said last week I was going to be a bit disappointed, because I know that whenever this thing happens and it ends on a big cliffhanger, they're going to resolve it very quickly and straight away, and they did. The explanation for it was so-so. It was basically like they looked at a timeline more closely, I guess. They've never done that before, because they've never found Sylvie before, and they're like, hey, that looks weird. Let's go in there. So they drop 2 portals, and Loki and Sylvie are saved, but brought into the TVA and arrested. Yeah, again, not the most satisfying conclusion to that, but it worked, I guess. I think I softened the blow, because I knew it wasn't going to be a fully satisfying thing. We also get the shot that a lot of people poured over in the trailer, which looked like Loki talking to Black Widow. And yeah, here we finally got an answer, as I suspected last week. It's Sylvie and Loki waiting out the end of Lamentus 1 and presumably what would be their death. I'm not going to go too into trailers. I have not watched the mid-season trailer. I haven't done that for any of the Disney Plus shows because I feel like there's like 2 weeks left in this whole show. Why would I ruin it by watching another trailer? So yeah, I don't know anything that I try not to spoil myself with these. I try to go week to week. So I don't know what was in if there was anything in that mid-season trailer that's going to shed some light or illuminate us into where the series is going. But I don't want to know if there is. But yeah, we did get an answer that wasn't Black Widow, quite obviously. And as they're brought in by security, and Loki's very annoyed that basically Sylvie has more security than he does, which is such a Loki thing. I love that. But yeah, when he's brought in, Mobius puts him into an interrogation room, and then he sends him to a portal. It's a red portal, so you know it's bad. Ooh, because they've all been gold and yellow so far. The whole show was kind of goldy yellow, but the red one was bad. And Loki called it, he thought it would be a bad memory prison. I think they call it a time cell, which, man, that's a lazy name. They put time in front of everything here. They're like, you know what, Ant-Man and the Wasp where they're like, oh, you just put quantum in front of everything.
Do you guys just put the word quantum in front of everything?
They just put time in front of everything. Could you not come up with a better name than time cell? Even chrono cell sounds a bit better. And what is this? Well, it's a recurring bad memory, as he basically said. And that bad memory is him being confronted by, drumroll please, Lady Sif, played by Jamie Alexander. She's back! We have not seen Sif in the movies since Thor: The Dark World, and I think she's made a few appearances in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. since that. But we haven't seen her in a long, long time. She wasn't in Thor Ragnarok. She's going to be in Thor Love and Thunder. And as much as I love Jamie Alexander and Sif, and it's good to see him back, this felt like a very kind of minor moment. They did like, I mean, I guess you shouldn't sacrifice your story for a big kind of moment or a big reveal, but it was kind of an underwhelming return to the MCU, wasn't it? Because all she's doing here is giving out to Loki for cutting her hair, which actually comes from Norse mythology, so that's a nice kind of nod, or tip of the cap there, tip of the horn. Ooh, that sounds wrong, actually, take that back. Yeah, to Norse mythology, but she's confronting him about that and slaps him, hits him in the balls, and punches him. And of course, it's recurring, so it happens over and over again. It's, that's okay. But, I don't know, it's weird. It's kind of like a weird way to bring her back. Just punching Loki in the balls over and over again. It's also the sort of thing where you're like, that's a cool idea, but like, wouldn't it be way more effective if they just, you know, cut the rest of the scene and just had him punched in the balls constantly? That would make him give up as an interrogation tactic, I guess. But I don't know. It was a fun memory, and it's good that they kind of use the time travel elements like that. But yeah, she does it like 2 times, 3 times it looks like. The third time he tries to stop her and kind of cuts her off, and he thinks he's going to get away with it, and she hits him again. So, you know, it keeps happening. Yeah, it was fine. I kind of was like, could you come up with something more creative than just being punched in the balls? I don't know if they were going for like a comedy beat here. It wasn't funny if they were. And they probably could have come up with something more devastating, or something that would reveal something about the character instead of just a slap to the dick. But anyway, that was what it was. We have here then basically a moment where he manages to stop her, and we get a sort of an emotional torture, I guess, where she doesn't hit him, but she says, "You're alone and you're always going to be alone." And that kind of spurs on, I guess, maybe more his romantic feelings towards Sylvie, which we're going to talk about now, because Owen Wilson brings him back. Mobius takes him back for interrogation now that he's been through all that. And he starts asking her about Sylvie. He's like, is she your partner? And he refuses to say whether she is or not at first. And he says, I'm not going to tell you what caused the Nexus event there, because you'll just prune me, which is the word they use when someone gets tapped by that stick. I don't know what that stick is called. A staff, time stick, chrono stick is what I was calling it. I'm just going to call it a stick. And yeah, he says he's going to send you to the time cell then, if you're not going to tell him what caused all this. And in doing that, he lies. He's like, oh, well, you know, she met me years ago, and we've been planning to take down TVA ever since. Ha ha ha. And he's like, oh, well, Sylvie's dead, by the way. You know, so maybe, you know, after doing that, he basically lies to him. It's really obvious, and Loki falls for very simply. And in doing that, Loki's feelings are kind of revealed about her. And Mobius is like, oh my god, you two were just swooning over each other. And that's what led to the Nexus event. I mean, if falling in love with yourself can't cause a Nexus event, what the hell could? You're an absolute narcissist. I love that. Loki falling for himself is that's just textbook, man. That's exactly what you want from Loki. And again, if I had to say a minor complaint, and I guess, this is something, the blow is sort of softened by all of last week's episode being dedicated to it, but Loki kind of jumps onto Sylvie's side very, very quickly. And again, I'm not even talking about the kind of love aspect of it. I just mean that he's like willing to cover for her and all this. Kind of came out of nowhere, but I guess maybe talking to Sif and saying you're going to be alone forever also might have triggered that on. So I don't hate it too much. I just think it's a slight weak link in the chain, but not weak enough that the chain is broken. So that's kind of what goes on in the TVA thing. But of course, Sylvie is not dead. And at that point, he shouts at her basically, or shouts at Mobius. Loki tells her this, or tells him this. Use I'm all over the place. Before pushing him back into the time cell, he's like, "You're being lied to by TVA. You had a life before this," and that's kind of when he disappears again. And Mobius kind of thinks about that. Sylvie can show you through enchantment, and of course, we know that Sylvie can't create memories. She can alter ones that are already there, but Mobius says she'd probably just do that. So, speaking of Sylvie, is she able to convince anyone else? So, outside the interrogation room, Hunter B-15 is ready to go in. Now, we should remember at this point that in episode 2, B-15 was enchanted by Sylvie, because that was when she was, when Sylvie was talking through her to Loki. So, of course, she has possibly seen the life she had before she joined the TVA, which makes things interesting. And she goes in to the interrogation room to confront Sylvie, and she sees a poster as she's going in, which is basically that you can verify through deletion, which is like, what's going to go on here? So she opens a portal in the interrogation room and tells Sylvie to follow her, and where they come out, we kind of, there's a little bit of stuff in between here that we'll come back to, but it's the Roxcart disaster, which we saw in episode 2. She's talking to Sylvie and she's basically saying, yeah, I saw what that was, but I can't be sure. You're saying I had life for the TVA, and she puts out her hand and then chants her again, and she's emotional and realizes that she's been lied to and that she had a life for the TVA, and then she says, "What now?" And that's the last we see of B-15 for a while. In between those moments, though, we have Mobius drinking in the office with Ravonna Renslayer, because, of course, this is a big case. And he's not quite right. He's drinking, but he's asking a lot of questions. He's asking about, Sylvie a little bit. He's asking about C20, because he doesn't believe that she's dead when she seems so normal. But she's kind of, tantalizing him, being like, hey, you know what? They're going to prune Loki, and you're going to be there, and so are the timekeepers, And, of course, he's still not all there. He still doesn't trust Ravonna or the TVA. He's dubious of all this stuff because of what Loki said to him. Distracts Ravonna and swaps her tempad. Now, at first I was like, what does he need her tempad for? Because I figure those are just time travel devices. Like, did she travel somewhere that would give her away? But no, apparently you can do a couple of things with the timepad. And one of those things is look up files that I guess Ravonna would be the only ones to have access to. Couldn't have put a password on that tempad, huh? But anyway, I guess they're all futuristic. They don't believe in passcodes. But either way, looking at her tempad, she sees that C20 is listed as deceased. And there's a debriefing video. So he watches the debriefing video. Probably should have deleted that incriminating footage as well. Ravonna Renslayer, maybe you're not as smart as we all thought you were. In that debriefing footage, C20 is fully lucid, and she's basically saying, you're lying to us. I was a variant. I had life for the TVA, blah, blah, blah. And then the video kind of cuts off, and we see that Ravonna Renslayer was there in the office with her. So Mobius realized he's being lied to. Loki was right. And because of that, he goes back to the time cell to confront Loki and says, basically, he created a Nexus event that could take down the whole TVA. He kind of believes him, he trusts him, and he takes him through the portal back to the TVA. Now, I should mention before this, while they were drinking in the office, Ravonna asked him, basically, if you go anywhere on the timeline using the tempad, where would you go? And I guess basically these sound like retirement plans. And it doesn't matter if you're a time detective or a cop or a detective in any story. As soon as you start talking about retirement, you're going to die. Because as he comes back through the portal, Mobius and Loki face off with Ravonna Renslayer and a load of Minutemen. And as much as Mobius tries to play it off as like, oh, I'm sorry, I took your tempad. Oh. And he says, if I was going to go anywhere, then I would go to what my life was before the TVA and get a jet ski. And of course, Don't talk about your retirement. He gets poked with the stick and is pruned. Mobius is seemingly dead. Or is he? We don't know. Yeah, he never got his jet ski. What a cheap emotional ploy for me to be like, oh man, he never got his jet ski. Is he dead? I don't know. Again, it's hard to take death at face value in the MCU because so many people have returned. Even someone who gets poked sick later, of course, Loki, doesn't die seemingly. So is Mobius alive somewhere? We don't know. And it's a character that I'd be happy to come back because I do like Owen Wilson in this role. It's been great seeing him. And we got 3 episodes of him, so that's not too bad. But it's kind of a shame we're not going to see any more of him. Loki is seemingly, touched by this, so it's nice that he has people he does care about, which wasn't always the case. But in doing this, Mobius tells her that Mobius is dead. I should mention that, as I did. But in doing this, at one point we saw that Ravonna also saw that B-15 was not in the interrogation room with Sylvie and that she's also been compromised. So she's taking Sylvie and Loki to the timekeepers to be pruned. Now she goes up in the golden elevator herself with them, but they have, of course, the collars on, which means that she can time twist them back if they're bad, basically, if they break what they're meant to be doing. And while there, Sylvie says something to the effect of, "Do you remember me?" And she's like, "I do remember you." And she's like, "Do you remember next event?" And she says, "I don't remember." So is she lying? Probably. Because it seems like Ravonna has a lot of secrets. And you shouldn't trust someone called Ren Slayer. They're probably bad. Again, I also want to point out that Sylvie was like, "Oh, I need to brainwash or enchant C20 to figure out how to get here." You should have just been obviously thinking, "Oh, well, the elevator to the top probably takes it to the bosses." And it does, because they're now standing in front of the timekeepers. We see them here in all their glory. We saw them very briefly at the start of the episode when Ravonna was talking to them. They look okay. Not great CGI. Again, they don't look fully real, and I think that's intentional because, as we learn in a few minutes, they're not real. Okay? They're both defiant standing in front of the timekeepers. As soon as I saw them, I was like, that's not Kang. So chances are they're not legit. We kind of are dubious of them to begin with. But this is a real Wizard of Oz moment. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. And as they're going to seemingly face their judgment, B-15 comes up in the elevator, releases them from their collars and throws them some weapons. And they square off with the Minutemen and Ravonna. You get a big kind of moment where Sylvie is fighting Ravonna. And sooner rather than later, very soon actually it seems, they've defeated everyone around them, and it's just Sylvie and Loki standing in the throne room of the timekeepers. Now again, we don't know what happened to B-15. I don't think she's dead because we didn't see her die, I don't believe. So yeah, assuming she'll be back, we just don't know where she went. And she'll probably show up as a Deus Ex Machina towards the end. Or maybe she'll have a new costume, like a lot of these Marvel shows. At the very last episode, she'll be like, "Oh, I'm actually this hero, and these are my powers, and this is what I look like now." Probably not, though. I just wanted him on a jet ski in the last episode, to be honest. That was my only hope for the last episode, and now we're not getting it. Brilliant. So, yeah, as soon as, if you didn't realise initially that timekeepers were probably bogus, and that there was going to be a big twist here, that they were fake, you probably copped on straight away as soon as Sylvie threw a weapon on them, and the head came off very, very easily of one of the timekeepers, and that's because he's an android. A gay android.
It's true. I am an android. A gay android.
Yeah, his head comes off, and he's an android, and as soon as that happens, the rest of the timekeepers sort of power down. Again, real Wizard of Oz moment, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. We don't know who is running them, though. But of course, Sylvie and Loki are shocked by this, and Loki kind of grabs Sylvie, and he's like, "Don't worry, we'll figure this out." And he's seemingly about to tell her that he loves her. Tell himself that he loves himself, which is important. Tell yourself you love yourself. Give yourself a little hug. But of course, a key to any villain in any movie, especially horror movies, is that make sure you kill the person you fight. Make sure they're dead, because Ravonna Renslayer has not been defeated. She comes back and pokes Loki with a stick, and he is pruned, obliterated. He disappears, leaving just Sylvie and Ravonna in the throne room, surrounded by a conscious Minuteman and robot timekeepers. And she says, "You're going to tell me everything." Dun, dun, dun. Now we should point out as well that Ravonna didn't react at all to them being robots, so seemingly she's aware of that. And I want to bring up a comic panel here that I'm sure is going to do the rounds over the next few days, where Kang is making android copies of himself, and Ravonna standing next to him, privy to the whole thing. So again, Ravonna seemingly knew that the timekeepers weren't real and that more is going on. Now then again, why was she meeting with the timekeepers in that case at the start of the episode? Or was she actually meeting with someone else? And is that someone else Kang the Conqueror? I don't want to get our hopes up for a Kang the Conqueror cameo because, we do that with every Marvel show. We're like, could this person show up? This person's going to show up. And then they don't, and we're like, Doctor Strange didn't show up. Reed Richards didn't show up. So could Kang the Conqueror make an appearance here? I'm sure he'd be teased if he is behind this, and it would make a lot of sense if he was. Maybe we'll see his hand. Maybe we'll see or hear his voice. Because, you might want to hold off on that for his big reveal in the movie. I don't know. But, that's very interesting end to the episode. Because where does it go from here? Are they going to try to take down the TVA, presumably? Or they pretty much have, I guess, now. But who is behind them? Who is giving them the marching orders? Who is the puppet master to all these puppets? Again, Kang is the obvious answer. And again, Loki's dead. How many times have we said Loki's dead, by the way? A lot. But, as revealed in a mid-credit scene, that's right, there is a mid-credit scene this week, if you missed it, because it seemed, I really was getting annoyed at those articles every week where it's like, is there a post-credit scenes with Loki? No, one-word article. Thanks for the click. This week, there is. And it's, it's a big one, I think. It's a weird one. Anyway, Loki wakes up assuming he's in hell or some form of afterlife, and he says, basically, am I in hell? And a voice, Richard E. Grant's voice, says, you are not in hell, but you will be if you don't come with us. And he faces what seems to be a load of different alternate versions of Loki. As I speculated a couple of weeks ago, and a lot of people suggested, Richard E. Grant is playing an older version of Loki. In his classic 60s Loki costume, by the way, which looks... I'm not going to say it looks good. It looks awful. And that's how it should look, which is great. It's got the weird spindly horns. It's got the weird bubbly yellow. It's got yellow gloves. He pulls it off somehow. Fair play to Richard E. Grant. I don't know how you made that work, but you did. We have another character. I think he's listed in the credits apparently as Boastful Loki. But he looks very different to any other Loki. Because he's holding Mjolnir. Okay, I've heard some people call him Black Loki, Black Thor. I don't know. Could this be an alternate version of Thor? It could be Thunderstrike, maybe? Possibly not. It could just be Loki, who's worthy and has Mjolnir. It doesn't look like a regular Mjolnir anyway, so who knows? That's probably the most times anyone's ever said Mjolnir. And I think I said it right, until I said it that last time. I might have said it wrong that time. I jinxed myself. And then we have a character we also mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Kid Loki, who's a very popular iteration of the character. And also, we should point out, a member of the Young Avengers. All these Disney Plus Marvel shows have had some connection to Young Avengers. And it's never really paid off, seemingly. But it could certainly be groundwork for what lays ahead with Young Avengers. And certainly another Young Avengers character has been introduced here. I think we had Speed and Wiccan in WandaVision. We had Patriot in Falcon and the Soldier. Now we have Kid Loki. Is that going to pay off? Who knows? It's a very popular version of the character. Will we see more of them? I don't know. I'll be honest. I didn't notice. I was looking so much at Richard E. Grant's costume and just enamored by it that I had to stop this and go back and have another look. Because there's another Loki there. Alligator Loki. A Loki Gator. Allocator. I don't know what we're going to call him. It's just a little alligator in a Loki helmet. Lovely, adorable. Disney we obviously want to print merchandise. You go into the Disney store and get a stuffed alligator with a Loki helmet or a Funko Pop. They know what they're doing. There's not really many... I don't think there's any alligator Loki in the comics, to my knowledge. The closest thing we have to an amphibian version of these characters is Frog Thor, or Throg. Are they going to make an appearance? Who knows? I mean, the big question as well is this where everyone goes that gets woken sick, or is it just Loki's? Is this a pocket dimension? What is it? And the closest thing we might get to an answer to this is what's behind them, because of course we're all looking at the people. Where they're standing, off to the right of the frame, we see Avengers Tower in New York, decimated. Now again, I said I haven't seen the trailers since. I haven't seen the mid-season trailer, but in one of the trailers we did get what seems to be Loki standing in a destroyed New York. Is this a timeline where Loki won the Battle of New York? We don't know. We don't know what this is, but it's interesting. But yeah, Loki's seemingly alive. Does that mean Mobius is alive in another dimension? Who knows? What do these sticks do? That's kind of a question that hopefully will get answered soon. But very intriguing cliffhanger to leave it on. We don't know how the series is going to go next, really. Presumably, Sylvie is going to try to figure out the truth about the TVA, the timekeepers, maybe even meet Kang. What's going to happen with Loki? I have no idea. He's going to meet a load of different variant Lokis anyway. How's that going to tie in? What's that mean? I don't know, but it's fascinating to watch. And that was episode 4. That was the Nexus event. I really liked this episode. It was a bit mad. It feels like we finally got back on track. And it leaves me wondering where we go from here, which is good. We have 2 episodes left in the series. And, you know, one of the criticisms I've had of a lot of the Marvel shows is that the last episode always, they get a new costume and there's a big old fight. And any nuance is thrown away. I don't think it would suit this show at all. But who knows? Hopefully it doesn't go that way. But 2 episodes left. So that's it. If you like this video, please give it a like. Because that makes sense. If you like the video, give it a like, you know. And if you want to tell me what you thought of the episode, of course, take the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. Did I miss something? Have you got any theories? I didn't use any Tom's theories this week. Oh, man, I think that might be the first time in ages. But, of course, next week, episode 5, the penultimate episode of Loki. If you don't want to miss me talking about it, press that subscribe button. Because, of course, I break these down every week, along with a lot more. Next week as well, I'll hopefully have my Black Widow review out. Either way, please come back next week when we talk about episode 5 of Loki. Because remember, I'll be watching. Take care.